Welcome back to another episode of the Changelog. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here again. Looking forward to another episode, first episode of the year, episode 7. Been doing a lot of these now, so let's jump into it. So
let's do it.
Screenly has been super busy the last, really always, but a lot of the last couple quarters of long-term work have come into ahead, so we have a lot to announce today. We'll get started with our Screenly Anywhere launch. So some background. Screenly got started with the Screenly player device, which is based on the Raspberry Pi. And then the Screenly Player Max, which is our more powerful custom-built player. And recently we've been transitioning to be a lot more hardware agnostic to give our customers more choice and less roadblocks for getting started with digital signage. So, Viktor, I'll hand it off to you. So, what is Screenly Anywhere, and what were some of the original motivations behind it?
Yeah. So, Screenly Anywhere really is a response to the rise of smart TVs that we started seeing more and more in our sales conversations over the last year or two, I would say. And whilst these TVs are good at some things, they're not great at everything. So, what we saw over the last few years is basically they're becoming part of like the deployment fabric for large enterprises. And different teams might have different priorities. Some teams, like the data team or the IT team, they focus on the security side of it. And for that, our Screenly Player Max is great, right? It has all the bells and whistles of like hardening and all that stuff you want to make sure that your data is safe. But you also have to acknowledge that other teams within the same organization may not care too much about security. Like the operations team that runs the cafeteria, they just ordered a smart TV because they want to show the menus, right? And now you have this problem where you have multiple devices and multiple systems, and you kind of want to unify that into one single platform. So what Screenly Anywhere is a web-based version of Screenly. So that means that it can run on more or less any smart TV in any browser, even on a tablet. And the way we accomplish this is actually very clever because these devices by themselves would usually not be able to manage to cope with a loading, say, a heavy dashboard or a heavy content in general. But the way we solved it is to push some of that stuff server side, so we can actually manage to render content that normally would not be able to render on these power constrained devices. So the long of the short is Screenly Anywhere can turn more or less any web browser into a Screenly device, and you can manage it from the same unified interface. And this is really important because it gives you a single pane of glass through your entire digital signage deployment. We're starting there. A lot of engineering went into it, and there are a lot more where that came from, and we're going to keep pushing that. And it's also worth noting that it's almost feature parity in terms of playback with our current players. We can even do edge apps on these devices, and that's our developer environment, right? So all our apps that we have, which are not just regular web pages, to be clear, they are actually running on the device normally. We've managed to make them run in this environment as well. So our clock, our widgets, all that stuff, they work on these devices as well with Screenly Anywhere. So that's the first announcement we have, and that's a really big one, actually.
Yeah, so that's definitely huge. So, I mean, when we first got the, some of the first customer feedback was when we launched our marketing site version of this, which was really just to enhance the demos. So we wanted to give people a way to have their free trial also display content somewhere. And so we had this idea of a virtual player. They'd get a link and then they could play images and videos. But that did create kind of an unforeseen problem, which was people really thought that was the Screenly experience. So we had this, basically super simple version, and people said, "Oh, well, I want to do this, this, and that." And we said, "Okay, well, you can, but you got to get a player." And that's where we really. Yeah.
It was more than that, though. People judged the feature sort of Screenly based on the virtual screen, which is not a fair representation of Screenly, which is why it was never something we were really happy with in terms of performance, which is why feature parity was such a big priority for as we launched Screenly Anywhere.
Yeah. So some of the things that users can do now with Screenly Anywhere that they were not able to do via web link before include what?
Yeah, so the previous version of a virtual screen, which, by the way, we were sunsetting virtual screens on April 1st, I believe it is, and that's going to be replaced by Screen Anywhere. One of the big differences is that we actually support all asset types more or less now, and if we don't support it already, we will be adding support for it that the current players support. For instance, our virtual screen, you could not render web pages. So if you had a playlist with some web content, you could not render that in there. So you just got a placeholder. And this kind of goes back to what you're saying. People kind of judged Screenly based on the output of virtual screens, and kind of it never lived up to the expectations of either the customers or ourselves, really. So that's why we kind of went back to drawing board and redesigned Screen Anywhere from scratch. And you can even do transitions and things, and it works on all the platforms. We've had it running on Chrome OS. We've had it running on ancient TVs. We've had it running on a lot of platforms already.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so talk to me about customers who, they have a successful Screenly Anywhere deployment. When are times where they would be encouraged to switch to a dedicated player?
It really comes down to use case at the end of the day. There are certain scenarios where Screenly Anywhere is perfectly adequate for what you're doing. If you have some simple use case where, imagine a retail environment where you might not, it might just be a few screens that you have and you just have some JPEGs on a slideshow. Screenly Anywhere would be perfectly fine to run on that. Where Screenly dedicated players really shine is in high compliance environments where you really need to be comfortable and confident in the security posture of these devices. So think banks, things high compliance in general. That's where we can make assertions about these devices so that we cannot do with a virtual screen, with a Screen Anywhere device, because we don't control that. So we don't know what how the firmware is configured. We don't know if it's secure up to, it has all the latest security updates. Those things we cannot make any assertions about with Screenly Anywhere. We can just say, yes, it will display the content and you can manage the content, but we don't know anything beyond that. We can't really do any device management. So that's really the difference between the two. Like we can't really, if you need a higher level of confidence in the security posture, then you probably want to go for a Screenly Max player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a big announcement with Screenly Anywhere. So, users now, they can get a free trial, and it's a real free trial in the sense that they can see the software interface, and they can also launch a screen anywhere they want with a web link. They don't have to buy a player. They don't have to wait for a player to come in the mail. It makes digital signage, the whole process, a lot faster. And you can have your first thing running in, a few minutes once you upload your content. So
that's right. Just type in anywhere.screenly.io in your browser, and then you pair that as you would with a regular screen with a regular physical device.
Pretty simple. So great. So that positions us well for the next thing I want to talk about, which is Screenly Align Central. Yes. Now that we have the ability to display content both with a dedicated player, then also a lot more easily on any device with a browser. That positioned us to jumpstart this product idea we've been having for a while, which is Align Central. So, Viktor, tell us, what is Align Central and why should companies care about it?
Yeah, so Align Central is really born out of a problem that we realized after speaking to some customers. So it really comes out of the problem of when companies started to go either remote or hybrid, the marketing message, not marketing, the culture part of communication that a lot of companies have relied on previously, which was usually through digital signage in the office, that no longer had any value, right? Because people were not actually in the offices to see those messages. What we realized was that we can leverage some of the technologies we already have for solving this problem. So Align Central really allows a new way of communicating with your customers, with your employees inside where they already are. So a good example of that is like you can bring this into your intranet. So Confluence, the popular intranet, for instance, where you can embed inside there a device that you can control through the screen interface, and you can now display content just like you would in a physical office inside your intranet. So that means that you're now getting the same impact as you previously got from having these devices around your offices or these screens around your offices. But now you get that in a virtual fashion, right? So you can now bring that messaging from HR, culture messages, whatever that might be, into a place where your customers, your employees already live, right? So they use these tools already, and it's much more powerful than just these email blasts that people will ignore, right? These mass email chains that people ignore. Here, you're putting it center of where people actually spend their days, which is going to be in a lot of these platforms, right? So that's kind of a big part of this.
Yeah, I think with digital signage, in general, whether it's player based or not, it is a very unique messaging medium.
Yes.
With mass email blasts, it sounds simple, and it is, but people have 1,000 things vying for their attention each day. Clicking on the email, reading it, reading the introduction, blah blah blah. It doesn't happen.
That's right.
As a marketer, first of all, you have to deal with the open rates, and then there's the click rates, and then there's just the general issue of like, do people care enough to like really read it? Which is hard to measure on the email metrics, right? And so
that's right.
Digital signage provides this new touch point where people don't have to do anything other than look, right? So it's going to be on screens that they're passing by in the break room. They're going to open up Confluence and see what's in there. It's going to be in their face with no interaction required.
That's right. And the best of it all is that you can repurpose what you already have, right? If you're already doing like birthday messages for your digital signage, now you have another way of pushing that out. And now that could be in your Zoom rooms, that can be in any other platforms where you have people, right? So it's kind of a omni-channel communication platform, really, where you're bringing the same thing to more eyeballs, really.
Yeah, and so there's a lot more messaging. Messaging is a lot more congruent, rather than people kind of sort of updating it on multiple platforms, and it never really gets done. It definitely doesn't match. This is a way where you can do a one-click. Hey, I want to get my company in line with. Hey, maybe it's just knowing it's somebody's birthday, or maybe it's knowing, hey, we had a really big win, we closed a really big deal. Let's get people excited about that.
Yes.
Or even just general things on, company culture, whether it's, hey, we're having this, cocktail hour on Fridays, or, hey, we really, an employee treated a customer this way and we really want to celebrate that. Before, if the messaging option was, hey, we're going to send an email to everyone, it's just not good enough today. You need to have that messaging hit multiple times, multiple, different interfaces, and Align Central provides that platform,
and in a timely fashion too, right? Which is even more equally important. And what's even more powerful is the trifecta of this, right? So you have regular screen devices that we've been doing for a long time, and now you can extend that further into all the smart TVs and all browser-based platforms. And then on top of that, you have Align Central now. So you have this trifecta of like you can, within a single pane of glass, push out and manage content in a way that we couldn't previously do, right? So that's the really powerful part. It's, while these are powerful features by themselves, they are magnified even further by being combined together.
Yeah, and I think also too, Align Central, it really provides an interesting messaging option for C-suite or just management layers. So maybe talk about that a bit more. Why would business management teams or C-suite executives care about digital signage messaging, where maybe they before would have thought, hey, that's really something for our marketing campaign, our marketing team to take care of.
Yeah, I think if you speak to CXOs of larger companies, culture is a big challenge because that is such a difficult problem to solve. And particularly for more old school managers, when COVID hit and people started going remote and then eventually ended up being some kind of hybrid model, a lot of the traditional ways you build culture kind of went out of the window, right? They kind of like vanished as far as like ways you could actually get people together and build culture. So when you speak to like these people, they are like scrambling. Like that's what keeps up a lot of people up at night. It's just how do you build culture in these new dynamics? And this is really where Align Central kind of was born out of. Like, how do you actually bridge that gap, right? How do you solve for culture messaging in 2025, where people like remote is no longer seen as a weird thing. Like even in conservative organization, hybrid is kind of a normal thing. Even you have to go back to work, maybe you have to go back to office like 2 days a week, whatever. But it's normal to have a hybrid workforce. So culture tools and solving for culture and building culture in an environment like that is extremely challenging. So that's where Align Central was born out of that, right? We've been a remote only company since inception at Screenly, right? And we have had built a lot of tools around this, and we've been working a lot with culture internally, how to build that. So this is kind of a natural extension of what we've already been doing as a remote company for the last decade and a half by now. And that's really where it started, right? It's like that combined with speak with customers who had the similar set of problems. So that's why it's different than it's just not another tech tool. It's a means to an end that is actually a real pain point for the C-suite.
Yeah, I think it's also important to highlight too that with the Screenly interface, it's super easy for that messaging to be controlled by the individual who wants to say whatever they want to say. So
Yes.
It doesn't have to be something where it's like goes through multiple approval layers or has to go through a copy editing team or this or that for a management layer to get in touch with employees they might have never met in real life before, depending on the size of the organization. So with a tool like Screenly Align Central, I mean, it can literally be as easy as, hey, uploading the content yourself or editing the text on our simple message app. It can go from one person to many, the same as it would normal messaging would be going from one to one.
Correct. And also because you can leverage the Edge app technology for both Edge apps, for both Screenly Anywhere and for Align Central, and of course for regular Screenly devices, it will be easy to build an Edge app that would directly integrate with your HR platform, for instance, to automate greetings for, say, from your HR system for birthdays and milestones for people as well, or for sales platform as well for milestones, right? So it's all coming together, much like you said as we open up the conversation. A lot of the things we spent the last year building, now we start to see the fruit of that labor.
Yeah. Well, okay, I think that covers it for Screenly Align Central. And so I think probably an overall theme that we've been pushing is just making Screenly available in a lot more places and a lot more easily accessible.
Yes.
What's very much in line with that is our other announcement, which is our Screenly and Zapier integration. So,
yes,
I think most people in the tech space, broadly speaking, are familiar with Zapier, but for those who are not, Zapier makes it very easy to have point-and-click integrations with almost any software tool. So if you want to have a Google Sheet entry, send an email, and then update a Facebook post, Zapier allows you to make those connections in a no-code way. So really anyone who's computer illiterate can figure it out. Screenly announced its own Zapier integration just in the last week. So Viktor, tell us about that. What was the idea behind Screenly and Zapier?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to the fact that we view Screenly as a platform rather than just a piece of software, right? We see ourselves like we are a delivery mechanism for content at the end of the day. And that content will live in many different platforms. What is really nice with Zapier is that they already done a lot of plumbing for this already for us. So out of the gate today, what you can do with our Zapier integration is to integrate with various file storage platforms. So you can, for instance, just create a Zap, I think they call them, that automates you dragging a file into Google Drive folder or a Dropbox folder or a Box folder. And when you do that, Zapier will pick that up, upload that to Screenly, and create a place for that. So you can basically create automation workflows that you couldn't otherwise do without writing your own integrations, right? So it's a nice kind of universal toolkit for creating automations, and you can do more things around that. And it's just, there is the possibilities are endless for Zapier in general, right? You can do so many things with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they quite literally have thousands of applications
yes.
Set up. So, so we're really excited about that. And I mean, I think we're excited about it also from the perspective of like seeing what people create. I think with a lot of digital signage integrations, they really don't go far beyond the company, mentioning that they have a, quote unquote integration with the product on their site. And then, when users are in their buying cycle, they say, oh yeah, it integrates and everyone's happy, until you actually open it up and you find out like, okay, basically it's like authentication and that's it, and so, if that, right. If that reliably. So, with, at Screenly, I think we realized that dynamic, and it's not as though these other companies who do that, like, oh, they're doing a really bad job. It's just that it's literally impossible to have an integration in every way that every user wants it for their unique cases. Like, it's just impossible. So you have to open up the software. So, part of doing that was our Screenly Edge Apps release, which is being used by many users today. There's out-of-the-box Edge Apps that people can use, but they can also edit the code line by line. And that's great. Definitely need to have some, technical abilities to pull that off for the custom apps. But what Zapier is going to allow people to do is, people who are just want to use a point and click platform, they can build some very interesting workflows with Zapier. So
yes.
And I think too, it kind of opens up the discussion for, what is the future of digital signage workflows. So, today we have, people who they have some type of, business messaging they want to get across, and there's some design cycle, and it's passed on to another team that uploads it and schedules it out on the signs. And there's some type of IT handoff to make sure it's all working. In the future, I think that could be very different. So Viktor, what do you think, are some upcoming changes maybe in the next few years to like the overall digital signage from idea to being on the sign workflow? What are some interesting things people can think about there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't have an episode without mentioning AI, right? So it's but on a more serious note, the hype around that is warranted in this concept, right? And what I mean by that is, this kind of comes back to what I said, Screen is a platform. And we are positioning ourselves as being one of the things an AI agent can plug into. And we very much anticipate a future where an AI can automatically create content for you and schedule it for you, where Screenly is the last piece in the puzzle, where the AI agent would say, okay, I now have my piece of content that you're happy with, that I generated for you, and I will now upload that to Screenly's API and send it off. So I think that platform play is going to play out, and we're not far away from that, honestly. Like with the likes of Cursor, I literally over an evening the other day, I designed an Edge app purely using Cursor, right? I just pointed Cursor to our Edge app documentation, and I had it write an Edge app for me. And it could even like upload it, tell me how to upload it, and do all the work for me, right? So these AI tools, like, they are the cusp of being like so mainstream and so powerful, right?
Yeah, they're only getting better, and so yeah. Well, I mean, right now it's a few steps before that, but I think we can definitely see where that road is going.
Yeah.
But right now with the Zapier integration, I mean, people can use it today. They can plug it into their existing workflows, which whatever apps they use, and really anything they can do with the Screenly API, they can do through the Zapier integration. So whether that's using
more or less, it's an asterisk there, but yes,
sure, yes. But I mean, for example, like if they want to use some type of threshold trigger from another software or database that they plug into and use that to schedule content, they can do that.
Yes.
Whether they want to use like a Google Drive link where someone just adds content and that then gets added to the playlist, they can also do that. I mean, there's tons of things where either you can use Zapier to get super sophisticated with digital signage workflows, or even on the other side of the spectrum, get super simple. So if there's someone on your team who just is not computer literate, but you can say, hey, listen, just like put this thing into this Google Drive box, like,
okay, yeah, you could build a permission workflow around that, right? You can say, well, I don't want anybody to have access to Screenly, but these people shall have access to this Google Drive folder, and anytime they pop something in that folder, it will display on the screens, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You could build like access control within other systems that then automates actions within Screenly.
Right. So, yeah, I think on the next Changelog episode, we'll definitely highlight some interesting use cases that we've seen bubble up from people's creativity. So, yeah. So, okay. We have also, you could say resurrected, but I think really completely redone our Chrome extension for Screenly. So,
yes.
Let's talk about that. That was a lot of work from the team. It really has been a long time coming, has been multiple versions, but now I think we have something we're really proud of. So, what should people know about Screenly's Chrome extension?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, we should caveat that it's actually a browser extension now because we actually expanded it to Firefox as well. So it's both for Chrome and for Firefox.
Yeah.
So to give people the backstory of why we had a Chrome extension in the first place, we created that to solve for the problem that authentication can sometimes be painful, right? So imagine you're logging into some kind of dashboard and you don't necessarily want to provide your credentials to Screenly, right? Because we have mechanisms for you to write scripts and automatically provide credentials to Screenly, so Screenly can automate the login on your behalf. But in some scenarios, you might not want to do that for security reasons or for convenience reasons. So we created the browser extension many years ago to automate that process. And what behind the scenes, what it does is basically automate the scheduling of a piece of content, not scheduling, uploading the piece of content. So you go into dashboard. Once you have the browser extension installed, you just press add to Screenly, and that will then take your browser cookie as part of the payload so that we can basically simulate being your browser and log into that page that you were. Now, these cookies expire after some time. So another key finding here was also to use that browser extension to be able to refresh that whenever that logs out. So that was kind of one of the many reasons why we built that in the first place. And we built it 5 years ago, I want to say, probably more. And
yeah, it's been there for a while.
Yeah, and we had almost forgotten about it. And then serendipitously, I logged into the dashboard and just realized that, the Chrome extension dashboard. And I was like, oh, actually, it has a decent amount of users. Yeah. So we decided to resurrect it, really. And as part of the resurrection efforts, we had to upgrade the API we're using. We had to update a few other business logics that we've changed since. And as part of that, we also added support for Firefox. So now you can find this browser extension both in the Firefox store or Mozilla store, as well as in the Chrome store. It's also open source. So if you don't trust us, you can inspect the source code yourself, and it's right there. It's on our GitHub, the Screenly account on GitHub under the browser extension. So links in the show notes for that.
Yeah, so super cool. I mean, it's really part of this overarching theme we've had of recent development, which is just uh, making all the steps before getting something on your screen as easy as possible, right?
Yes.
There's no beauty is really often in simplicity rather than complexity, and that masquerades as sophistication, right? I mean, all the other stuff, as far as we're concerned, is just nonsense that we want people to deal with as little as possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the whole company is making sure that comes across to the user as the seamless experience. Obviously, there's so much going on in the background,
Yeah.
but whatever we can do to minimize the clicks, essentially, that people have between getting an idea of some communication they want to show and having that display on the screens, the better we're able to serve our users. So
That's right.
um, yeah. So, and talking about these kind of projects that we've resurrected and greatly improved. Another one, which is one of the oldest Screenly integrations or cross-platform use cases, is our WordPress app. So, Screenly for WordPress. Why is it important, Victor?
Yeah. So this is an even older project.
Yeah.
It's from it's probably like 7 years old now, and the reason why we resurrected it was actually not for the same reason, but actually it plays into the whole of idea that we want to be a platform. Um, WordPress has been in the news a lot lately. I'm not sure everybody's seen that, but there's a big controversy around WordPress right now, a big lawsuit going on, which made me realize that, oh, we actually have a WordPress extension. And
Yeah.
over Christmas, I took a look at it and I had this interesting idea, which was, okay.
Victor spent time this Christmas with Cursor rather than his family, it seems.
I spent some time with Cursor. I definitely spent a lot of time with my family, but I did.
Yeah.
It piqued my interest on a very simple thesis, which was, all right, I have this 7-year-old project. Can I, without writing a single line of code myself, prompt Cursor to update this to WordPress in 2025, updated support for the latest PHP version because it was running a super ancient version of PHP, update to the latest WordPress, whilst also like adhering to industry best practice like unit tests, integration tests, and all that stuff, right? Without writing a single line of code myself.
Yeah.
It was not entirely straightforward, but it was possible. So we still haven't received the approval for the updated version in the App Store, which is probably due to the whole controversy in the WordPress ecosystem that's happening right now. But the long and the short is that it is possible. And part of the reason why we are resurrecting these projects is because we in part abandoned them way back when because it was too much overhead in maintaining them. But with the new Gen AI tools we have out there, it's so much cheaper for us to maintain these projects that we can move faster and we can have more of them without having to hire more people, basically.
Yeah. Put the initial brain power into developing them, but then all the kind of nonsense and making sure that they're maintained well is a lot easier.
Yeah, with something like WordPress, right? They release updates. I don't know what the release cadence is, but like there are numerous releases every year, right? And every release you have to do some updates. It might be small updates, but still it adds up, right? Across all these platforms and all these apps. So now it's much more cost effective for us to maintain these by leveraging our AI friends, really. Obviously, with a lot of humans in the loop, but it's part of the reason why we resurrected the WordPress plugin. And I also think it's a really useful plugin, right? So I guess we haven't really spoken about what that is in the first place. But the WordPress plugin allows you to create digital signage-friendly content from WordPress. So it's a plugin that you install in your WordPress installation, and it basically allows you to add a query parameter, which is like a question mark or question mark SRLY, I think it is, after every page and blog post. And what it does is to basically restyle that blog post or page in a digital signage friendly way, meaning that it's optimized for standard resolutions for a TV, which is very different for a content that you normally produce for these. So it started from basically like giving people a good way to create content using an existing platform that they know and use, right? And repurpose that for signage.
Yeah. I mean, when people, I mean, WordPress is probably like the most popular CMS ever, right? So
yes,
when people have this content, it's a question of, okay, like what happens, right? And does it just sit on the blog? And in many cases, that's true. But it's a whole workflow to get it tooled up for digital signage, and this tries to make it a lot easier. So
that's right. So now you can repurpose the content you already write for your blog for all the screens you have in your office as well.
Yeah. So wow. So we covered a lot today. So Screenly, anywhere, Screenly Align Central, Zapier integration, our browser extension for Chrome and Firefox, WordPress. Screenly is making some moves here, and again, we want to minimize the clicks from getting an idea to getting on your digital sign, and I think we've really delivered on that recently. So we're really excited to see how customers use these new tools, and as always, we are always very happy to answer questions from our current customers or potential new customers, and so reach out anytime. And we look forward to a really productive year ahead. It's already 2025, and we're fully in it. So excited to see what the year brings us.
Indeed. Perfect. Thank you so much, Daniel. Have a good one.
All right. That'll wrap it up. See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.